Good morning. Welcome again, everyone here. This is as the last regular Sunday in Lent. This is also the last in my little sermon series that kind of profiles some of the ideas in Dietrich Bonhoeffer's book, The Cost of Discipleship. And today we're going to dig a little bit more into some of the practical things being a disciple. It's not just about suffering, although one can certainly get that idea. Today, the theme is going to be based off of chapter 17, which is the simplicity of the carefree life. And this one gets to questions of possessions, where our loyalties are, where our hearts are. And since our loyalties tend to follow our hearts, I thought I would title the sermon, Whence Calls the Heart? And then I realized Hallmark beat me to it. It was kind of like that Christmas when I was going to talk about how he's a baby, but he's really the glorious king, and I was going to call it A Crown for Christmas. That's also a Hallmark movie. They already took that from me too. But we know the phrase. We know the phrase, right? When Jesus says it, where your heart is, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. We're familiar with that one. Now, it's interesting because Bonhoeffer says we should flip it to try to understand it. Flip it. He says you should try, where your heart is, there your treasure will be. So what you love and value affects how you view things. So, for example, if your heart is loving and you're out biking on the loop, you will see somebody who is troubled and in a bad economic situation who needs help. If your heart is cold and selfish, you will see a moocher and a parasite who's trying to take your stuff. And if Jesus says that that guy is a child of God, you might not hear it, or maybe not grasp it, at least not in your heart. We see Jesus' way when Jesus is in our heart, along with Jesus' commands. It's like the heart's kind of a filter for things. How we process or recognize them depends on how we're feeling, where our priorities are. So if you follow along with this, if my heart is on Jesus, I will see material possessions and wealth and these things. They are not my hope. They're not my salvation. They're not the promise I live for. They're not the things that give me security and a future in this world. Because I know and I feel in my heart that Jesus is that for me. Now, here's where I'm going to get all curmudgeon-y. So brace yourselves, because someone's going to have to get off my lawn here pretty soon. But this is where I get to start griping about how much I don't like talk about in your heart. And I've probably done it before, those of you who've been here a while. I've been here 15 years, so sermon ideas probably recycle themselves. But it's because I always feel like the heart talk gets used as a cop-out to avoid actually doing things. And yes, I'm becoming the guy who can't just enjoy a good, heartwarming story about Jesus in your heart, because I'm the one who has to ask, okay, now you got Jesus in your heart, what are you going to do differently than what you did before you had Jesus in your heart? What makes your life different with Jesus in your heart than just your life without Jesus in your heart? And this is why I'm not a good Hallmark writer. Although I did realize, as I was writing this, I do come from a small town in the woods. I used to wear flannels and split my own wood. And I did marry a city girl from Colorado. I need to write a script. But the story I hear, this is why I get grumpy. Pastor, I know I have tons of possessions and lots of money, but it's okay with Jesus because I don't have them in my heart. And I'm like, Okay, well, if they're not in your heart, give them all away then. Oh, well, that's not literally what Jesus means. He just means don't have them in your heart more than Jesus. And once you don't put them in your heart, you can have as much as you want. And it kind of feels like I'm talking to the alcoholic who says, I'm not an alcoholic. I can quit drinking anytime. And then I say, okay, so stop. I just don't want to. Oh, okay. So you could talk all day about not having it in your heart, as if I could plug you into a heartometer, and it would measure, he's really attached to that Camaro, but not really as attached to the old China. He doesn't have the old China in his heart. But of course, there is no heartometer. So what I hear is, I don't want to give up my stuff, and I don't want anybody questioning how I get my stuff or what I do with my stuff. I'm just going to say the phrase, I have Jesus in my heart, and then I go on with business as usual. So that's my curmudgeon side. Don't tell me you have Jesus in your heart and not share with your neighbor. Don't say Jesus is your heart, and then is in your heart, and then you rip people off and cut off their jobs and whatever. If your heart is with Jesus, your actions should show it. But Jesus did say that, and Bonhoeffer reminds me of it, so maybe I shouldn't be quite so cynical. What we love and value in our inner selves, in our hearts, and in our minds and in our souls, it does matter. Even if some people use it as a cop-out, if Jesus really is in your heart, you do value things differently. And here's the biggest way you can tell the difference. If your heart is with Jesus, there's a lot of life that is a bit more, it's more freeing, more relaxed, and less anxious. Your life isn't full of this perpetual worry about losing things and what's going to happen to your things. If your heart is on your things, then you become fixed with protecting them and not losing them. And that anxiety can tie you down. For example, say you bike around town a lot. You're one of those people that rides your bike. I'm not talking about racing. I'm talking about you're going to the coffee shop, and then you're going to go to the post office, and then you're going to, you run your errands on your bike, right? What kind of bike are you going to do that with? Are you going to go down and buy that $10,000 specialized carbon fiber with the oval-shaped front gear? Because if it's oval-shaped, then it's better than the circular ones. I learned this. I can't tell you the physics of why that is. I just know they cost a lot of money and they're supposed to be better. Is that what you're going to ride around? No, because you know what's going to happen. You take that $10,000 specialized carbon fiber bike and you go park it at the Raging Sage, and what are you going to be doing the whole time you're sipping your coffee? Wait, he's walking, guy's walking near my bike. Is he shady? Okay, someone's by my bike, right? All you're going to do is worry about him taking your bike. And it's not an unfounded fear. I ride the loop. I see some of these bike warehouses under Grant Road. I don't know, I will assume in my better nature that they all paid for them legitimately. Or what you could do is get the cheap bike from the pawn shop and then cover it in duct tape, and then let the mud put on it, and then put some cheap stickers on it, scratch them. That's what they do in Germany, I'm told. You have to make your bike look ugly so they won't take it. But I guarantee you, if that's what you're riding, and you're sitting at your coffee shop, you'll be able to enjoy your coffee a lot more. Because even if they take it, it's probably only worth 2 or 3 of those cups of coffee, gourmet coffee you just bought. The less value it has, the less I worry about losing it. This is how things come to control us in our lives. When we have to start restructuring the way we live around protecting the stuff we have, then that stuff starts to own us. There was a priest who once said, as a Catholic priest I knew in D.C., he said, the way you can tell what really is your God is the first thing that pops into your mind that you worry about in the morning. And I remembered that, and I rolled over in bed, and there was my cat going, meow. And I was like, yes, master, I will serve thee. Thy food shall appear now, thy master. No, that isn't, aside from the cat, and where's my sandals, and why did the kids leave that thing on the floor? The first thing you think about, and his point was, do you wake up in the morning and your first thought is, oh, I need to lose weight? Do you wake up in the morning and your first thought is, where's my stocks? How are my stocks doing? If you wake up in the morning and your first thought is, oh, I am going to get back at Bill in accounting for what he said to me, then that's where your heart really is. Maybe a better way to say it is, whatever you stew over at 3 a.m. in the morning when you wake up and you don't want to be awake and you can't go back to sleep because you're so mad stewing about it, that's your God. Because that's where your anxiety is. That's what's sucking you down. It's one of those paradoxes again, right? Where we gather stuff to protect us from future contingencies. We stockpile money as an asset so we can have financial security, and it does get us a good measure of security. Obviously, if you're working, paycheck to paycheck, it's hard to do long-term planning, and everything has to be about that next paycheck. It's not a very freeing way to live. But once you get all those assets, you got to protect them. So it's a paradox. Your money frees you, but it also becomes your master. And this is where Jesus comes in, telling his disciples not to go stockpiling stuff to hedge against the future. It can decay, the whole moth and rust bit. It can get destroyed, it can get stolen. Your Bitcoin can lose value. I know that's a shocking thing. It could disappear magically into interwebs. And the other thing is it takes over your heart and your focus, and you become unable and unwilling to see anything that might entertain the possibility of a risk of losing that. The wealth can make you very risk-averse, very concerned with everything being predictable and certain and secure. It can make you worried about trying new things, about innovating. How can you honestly serve the Lord when what you're really saying is, I'll serve the Lord after I've taken care of my stuff? How can you say Jesus is the center of your life and Jesus is in your heart? What you're really saying is, I'll serve him later. So, the life of discipleship. The life of discipleship is usually seen, it usually gets put in these sort of, again, we think of it in grand terms, because that is how it started out for the disciples. It was about literally following Jesus around. It was literally selling everything. It was literally getting crucified and stoned for Jesus. That is how it ended up for those original disciples. They were embracing suffering and death. But what I think Bonhoeffer's trying to show us, and I think what Jesus is getting at in his words here, is that the life of stuff is not necessarily better, that it involves a lot of anxiety, that it can be full of fear, that it's risk-averse and change-averse. It can lead us to be excessively self-interested, and it can make us full of anxiety and care and worry. It's not necessarily a better life. That's why he calls the chapter the simplicity of the carefree life. Simplicity makes it carefree. Less to lose is less worry. Less worry is more time for risking things, for trying new things, for embracing new things and new people. Less worry makes you less likely to view everything as a potential threat. It's freedom in not having. And it's what Jesus tells his disciples that they have to give up to gain. Amen.